Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's stream. I am going to just show how we could bring HTML into a RAG chat application. As usual, I am showing my favorite repo, the one that I spent too much time on, which is Azure Search OpenAI demo. It is a repo that is designed for deployment to Azure and uses Azure AI Search for the retrieval and uses Azure OpenAI or just OpenAI for the LLM. And I recently made a change to add HTML parsing using Azure Document Intelligence because a new version of Azure Document Intelligence supports a huge range of formats. And I basically just missed the fact that HTML was one of them. And thanks to somebody who pointed out in the issue tracker that they were looking for HTML support. So this is a change. I just added HTML. And what you can see is that the way we set up our processors is that for each file format, each extension, we have a parser that extracts the content from the document. And let me make this bigger now. All right, here we go. So we have the parser, and that extracts the content from the document. And then we have a splitter, which splits it up into chunks. So basically, for any file extension that we have, we need to have a way of getting text out of it. And then we need to have a way of splitting the text into good sized chunks for our search index. So most of these use document intelligence as the parser and then the sentence text splitter. And that's what I used here. Now, this does mean that we have to use Azure Document Intelligence, which is a cloud-based service for parsing the HTML files. We could add a local HTML parser. That's a bigger change, so I didn't do that here, but that would, certainly be possible if we want to do that, or if somebody wants to submit that change. So that's this. And this PR just got approved, so I figured we could just merge it live. Ready for this? Squash and merge. Bam. Okay. So now that's in main, and I will generate a release later today just to let people know about it. So I've already got that checked out locally, and I've been playing with it. So what I decided to do was to make a RAG based off of my own blog. And my reason for doing this is because, one of the big questions when we're building RAG apps is, are they answering questions in a grounded way? Like, are they grounded to the data? And so I need data that I know really well. And as it turns out, what I know very well is what I myself have written. And I also think this is interesting because my blog goes over the last 2007, 2024, many, many years. What is that? 14, 20? No, I can't do the math. 3 plus 10, 17 years. Yeah. So goes over many, many years, as many, many topics, and in fact includes a lot of outdated information. So I might be able to test, how grounded it is by asking something which would have an outdated answer based on my blog, because, I don't, update my blog posts for every, technology change that happens. So I thought that would be interesting. Now, in order to bring these into this application, I needed to actually download the HTML files. So what I did was I used the Blogger API. They have a feed here. This is a JSON feed. So I got the feed, so we can take a look at what that looks like in the browser here. So you can see here, this is the feed. So this is similar to RSS. I think this might be the Atom. Yeah, so Atom and RSS are similar. This one's Atom. But it's a JSON thing. And so I was able to get that in order to parse out and get the HTML links. And then once I get back that HTML link, I then open it up and I read it in and save it locally. So I save them all into the data folder, because that's where we store data locally here. So you can see all these HTML files. And then I ran AZD up in order to deploy this application, and it did the data ingestion as part of that. So what you can see is a long line of this sort of thing. So it says, okay, it's extracting text from, this HTML file using Azure Document Intelligence. It's splitting it into sections. it's uploading the blob to blob storage, and then it's computing the embeddings. That's what that means here. So this is basically the steps of data ingestion, right? Is we get, we have the data, we have the HTML files, we extract the text from that data somehow. We split it into good sized chunks. So in this repo, we use 1,000 characters as the chunk size, which works good for English. It doesn't work so great for other languages. So if you're using other language, you'll want to reduce that size. We upload them to blob storage so that we can refer to them later. Now, with a public website, you might not want to do that. So that's an interesting thing to consider there. And then we compute vector embeddings and store them in the search index. So there we go. They're uploaded. So we could go and, well, first I'll just show you it working, right? So here we go. This is my RAG app. So I search for sleep strategies because I have blog posts about my sleep strategies. And here you can see it says here's some sleep strategies. And these are indeed strategies that I use to try and get to sleep because I am not very good at sleeping, especially when there's really exciting technology happening. So I do have to use these strategies these days. And you can see that it opens up this HTML file in this iframe here. And this is just our standard way of displaying citations in this app. This may not be how you want to display a web page, especially if it is a publicly viewable web page. So what you may want to do instead is actually, open up the full URL to the live web page. And I have done that in another branch. I didn't try making that change on this one yet. But if you can map your file names directly to a URL, then you could just take that file name and just put a suffix on it. I think I could actually do that here. So I guess I could try that. So because it's sleep strategies for a racing mind. And let's see what the form is. Oh, okay. I actually wouldn't be able to do that here. Well, we'll see. So if I did sleep strategies for a racing mind, .html. Yeah, and it says it's not found. And that's because the Blogger URLs also have the date and the year in them, the month and the year in them. And I dropped that when I did the ingestion. So if I wanted to be able to link to the full URL, I should really store that in the search index. So I think the proper thing to do would be to add URL, full URL as a field in your index, right? So I'll show you what we make right now. Right. So right now, when we store these documents, we store a unique ID for the particular chunk. Remember, these are chunks from each document. The actual content of that chunk, category, if we've set that, which we didn't, the source page, and that is that's if there's a page number in the PDF. But that is what we see in the citation here. That's the source page, and the source file is just the full file name. So there's slight differences here because for PDFs, if there's a page number, we want to link directly to that. So what we could do is, add an additional thing here, which would be like full URL. But then we'd need to actually be storing the full URL. So you'd want to change several things about the ingestion to actually pull based off URL and then be able to store that full URL. And you'd need to actually change the index. So let me show you what my index looks like right now. Okay, my blog. There we go. There's my blog. All right. So this is my Azure resource group that has everything we need. So I'll go ahead and take a look at the search service and at the indexes for that. And you can see it has 1,200 documents. And I was just thinking wow, have I written that many blog posts? No, I haven't, because one thing to keep in mind with Azure AI Search, a document is, a document in the index, but it's actually a chunk of a document for us. So that can be a little confusing when you're just thinking between your documents and your Azure AI Search documents. So remember, when we're doing a document, I always put it in quotes because a document is really a chunk from a document. And sometimes it could be the whole document if you've got small documents, but a lot of times it's going to, each document is going to get chunked into multiple documents, right? So let's actually just take a look so you can see. All right, so here's the search explorer, and I always just go to this and press star because that's how I can just get, it's a wildcard search for everything, so I can just see a bunch of stuff. What you can see is the results. So we can see an ID. So that's an ID that uniquely identifies a chunk. We can see the actual text content here, and we can see the vector embedding for it. And then we see the source page and source file. So you can see in this case, source page and source file are the same because there's no page number associated with, with the chunk. Because HTML files, PDFs have page numbers. HTML files, they don't have page numbers. Now, if you're really clever, you could try to break something up into anchors, right? If you were so here, right, this is a heading. I don't know if this has an ID. It probably doesn't. No, it doesn't. But if you had a website like this where your headers had IDs, right? Which means, when headers have IDs, it means you can type your, hashes over there and it jumps to that. That would be very clever, right? That would be a really clever chunking strategy. And it might be that this is already implemented. I have to check like Llama Index and the other places that have chunking implemented. But if you're taking an HTML file, you could search for, headers with IDs and use that to delineate your chunks, because then you could also store that in the, in your index, and that way you could jump directly to that heading. So that's something to think about as well. That could be nice and clever. Now, something I notice here is look at this content that says blog archive February, January. Okay, so this content is this sidebar here. And really, I don't want that sidebar to be in any of my stuff. So I have a few options, right? I could in Azure Document Intelligence, you can make a custom layout model. So maybe I should make a custom layout model and say like, hey, you should always ignore this and only extract from here. I could also, I could do an HTML, a local HTML parser, and make sure that, it was only parsing out this part. So I could use, Beautiful Soup, Python Beautiful Soup, in order to grab just the blog post. I could also probably even get the full blog post from a feed. But I don't know if that's going to render as nicely if it's just the HTML. So yeah, there's definitely some things I can do. And it only matters if it's affecting, the quality of the answers. But it's certainly an observation, right? So whenever we're doing RAG things, we want to think about our data ingestion and making sure we're ingesting high quality data. And this right here is not very high quality data. Let's see, the rest looks pretty good. So yeah, so there you go. That's what the index looks like. So now we can keep asking questions of it and seeing what else we observe. If you have any ideas for questions you want to ask of my blog, you can post them in the chat. I already observed some things that it can't answer, right? I thought I'd be able to answer the question, does Pamela have a baby? And you could probably assume by my cat ears on today that I do. My toddler put them on today. But it says, based on the available sources, there is no information about Pamela having a baby. But the available sources were actually very relevant. And I think if a human read them, the human would say that I do have a baby, because it's like, here's a blog post titled, How and Why I Co-Sleep with My Baby. So I would really come to assume from that I probably do have a baby. But it's interesting that the LLM does not want to jump to that assumption here. Now, part of it could be the prompt. That's the other thing I was thinking of doing, because right now I have not modified the prompt at all. So it's very much not targeted for this use case, right? It still says assistance helps the company employees, right? So I think I should change this. So assistant answers questions based on Pamela's blog. You can assume all blogs are her opinion and answer accordingly. Let's see. Okay, so I'll try that. And then I think I also have it running locally. So I'll just wait for it to reload and grab the local URL. Should be at 5,000. Host. Here we go, or 50505. Okay, John has a question for the RAG. Where did Pamela go to school? Let's try it out. I'm guessing it's just going to claim not to know, but we'll find out how good the sources are. There is no information about where Pamela went to school. I think it's right, actually. I'm not sure if I ever. So I did find that I volunteered at Berkeley High School. I found that I'm teaching an online Python class, and it found that I taught at UC Berkeley. So, our search is working pretty well where it found lots of things. So we could try, what did Pamela teach at UC Berkeley? Oh, I have it on my profile. John says is on my profile. It's on my website. The other thing we can do is here, we can try, let's just do one of these live, right? So here we go. So we're going to go ahead and, so if I just want to quickly add a page to this, I'll just do this, right? So, Pamela Fox.html. Okay. So now I've got a new page in here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and let's see, where do I want to do it? Here. So we have the new document added. Let's just check that it is here, Pamela Fox HTML. Okay. And I'm going to run the ingestion script. And let's see, it's loading the environment, installing dependencies. Yeah, we'll just give that a sec. All right, so we'll see if it gets smarter based on that. And then I'm also trying to load my local one. Okay, so now the local one is loaded. So I'm going to try the question we have before. Does Pamela have a baby? Because I think this should be with our new prompt, assuming it reloaded. So we can check the prompt when we see the results here. Okay, still running. Okay, so it said, once again, there's no, but let's check. All right, so assistance answers questions based on Pamela's blog. Yeah, so it still really doesn't want to say I have a baby. All right, that's fine. Co-sleeping, or we can do more technical stuff like how, importance of concurrency, right? I've talked about that a few times on the blog. I just like how random these topics can be. Yeah, so this is good. This is accurate, and it comes from this blog post, best practices on concurrency. Okay, so code for a synchronous call. I don't know. That's very generic. Let's see what it says. All right, and it's providing the code. It's using Markdown, so I should add Markdown support for rendering that prettily. But here we've got a asynchronous call using Fast API. This looks good, except for the indentation, because that's just because we're not rendering the indentation right. And it looks like that came from, that came from the one we're just looking at. So that looks pretty good. All right, so we ran the prep doc script, and you can see that it skipped most of them. That's because it's checking the hash of the MD5. So there's an MD5 hash along with every file. And when the MD5 is the same, it could just skip it. It did notice that PamelaFox.html was new, and it indexed that. So let's see if we can get an answer from here, right? So this one said that I graduated from USC. Okay. Pamela graduated from, oh my gosh. Let's see what are the sources. Yeah, and it found the right source. It's so interesting that it really, this is not a usual usage for RAG to like answer questions about someone's history. So it might be that it's just very reluctant to, to talk about that. Let's see. So does this one actually this chunk, does that chunk have graduated on it? Oh, because I also said I graduated from the Buddhist retreat. Did Pamela go to USC? So actually, that's a matter of it not finding the USC chunk. There we go. Okay, so that's super interesting. So what we could do, actually, I could try this one again. I'm going to reload so it doesn't have any of the chat history in it. And then I'm going to change this to retrieve 5 search results. 3 is actually a little bit low. So let's try 5 search results. Once again, it said does not mention where I graduated from. So this time we got the supporting content. And what was the search query? So Pamela graduated from. Yeah, for some reason it's having a hard time getting that USC one. But if I search specifically for a USC, oh, and that time it didn't get it. Oh my gosh, that's fascinating. And why did it go to this one? I wonder if it's over indexing on Pamela. USC. I also should reload so it's not poisoned from the rest. USC. Yeah, this turns out might not be a great use case for USC refers to the University of Southern California. I agree. Is that even on there though? All right, we had some other ideas. Why do we need declarative mapping in SQL Alchemy? That's a good one. So I think that's kind of question is going to work better. I think what we discovered is the kind of question that doesn't work well, at least with this current prompt, is getting it to answer affirmatively, things about my biographical history. It seems to be very reluctant to do that. So here we go. Declarative mapping. Yep, that's great. That's very good. That's what I've said. So it's definitely working well as a way of querying all the technical things I've talked about in my blog. It's just not working well as a way of getting personal biographical facts. All right, so okay, we have got that going. So there's definitely, I think it's a great starting point, but depending on your use case, I think there's a lot of ways you can really improve it. Yeah, so as John's saying, not using my name in the query, but then it's not sure what we're asking, right? So how do we ask a question without, mentioning my name? So here we go. Schools mentioned in the sources, USC and Berkeley High School. That's pretty good. What about what universities are mentioned? Now, these sorts of questions we're saying what schools are mentioned, what universities are mentioned. These are actually traditionally not great to ask in with a standard RAG because we're only getting how many sources right now? 3. So we're down to 3. So imagine you only get 3 citations, right? So you're only going to get the citations from those 3 sources. Now if we get let's say change it to let's change it to 20, right? And then let's change it again, go back and see what schools are mentioned. Let's see if I can get more schools this thing. But the problem is asking a RAG for something summarize everything across some category. Oh, did I go over? I probably went over the token limit. Yeah. Okay, so 20 is too much. You'll go over the token limit. Let's try it with 10. See if that'll fit inside the context window. And here we go. So this is a much more substantive list, but we had to bring in 10 chunks. So, generally when you're trying to ask a question, that's where the answer requires you to look across the entire search index. It's not as good of a fit for at least this standard approach RAG. There was one that Microsoft's working on called Graph RAG that they talked about as being particularly good for answering questions across a big code base because it actually does kind of a clustering. Where's the picture? Yeah, so just like a clustering of the topics in the data set. So what it could do to, to answer a question is actually could kind of like hit up the clusters. And so that could work for broader questions. It may not, it might not still work for a question like, where you're comprehensively trying to find absolutely every school that is mentioned in a data set, right? That's not what, what this standard RAG is good at. But it is good at, combining things from a couple different sources, up to like 10 different sources worked all right. But we do have, limits. All right, so that was all I wanted to show. It's just a quick test of, using HTML. Any questions? A couple minutes left until I have to go to a meeting. Okay, so if you do want to get started with it, you can try it from as your search OpenAI demo, and you just have to add HTML files into the folder. If any of you are interested in like trying to bring in a local HTML parser, there definitely are ones in various repos. There's one here. Let me find it. HTML parser. I was just checking it out here. This is an HTML parser. This uses Beautiful Soup. As you would expect, Beautiful Soup is the Python package for parsing HTML. It's very good at it. And it's got, you can see how they did actually special treatment of the H1. So, this might work pretty well. You can also check out to see like stuff like Llama Index to see what types they support. I'm sure they must have an HTML reader as well. So that's also another popular option for data ingestion. All right. So that's all I wanted to show today. Bye, everyone.